So now we dig a little deeper into select statements, which let us see the data inside of a table. I've got my SQL open here. I'm going to clear out this from what I was working on a minute ago. I'm just going to start with an open pane here and type use starter semicolon. And now I already showed you how you can select star from student like that and run it. And you'll get a list of every column and every row, and in this case we got 100 rows back from what we typed, or from the student database. Now the star up here means that you want to see every column in the table, but it is possible to write simpler statements that specify which field you want. So let's open up a new pane here, and we'll say select. And now let's start listing the names of the fields. And to see what they are, I'm going to come down here. I'm going to say last name. And notice what's happening. As I begin to type, it's checking to see if the name I'm typing matches anything in the database. And it does, the column name, last name over here. When I see below what I'm typing, the field that I want, I can just press a tab. Let's do it again with first name. F-I-R. Now, it's selected the first name, which is what I want. All I have to do is press the tab key on the keyboard, and it will spell the name out for me like that. So let's just run it with like so, and I'll click that, and oh, I got an error. It says unknown column last name in field list. Well, see the red X down here? That means that you can't figure out last name or first name, and the reason is because I didn't say from student. I have to tell it what database or which table I want to come from. So let's try running this. Now I get the names of the first and the last name. I can add other fields too. So for example, I could add enrolled date. E-N-R-O, there it is. I hit tab, it spells it out, and I get the field name. So I can get them in whatever order I want across here. Notice that exactly the way I spelled them is the way they show up down here. Last name, first name, no capital letters here, capital letters on first name, and enroll date, and so on. Also notice that I spelled the word select and the words from in lowercase. They turned blue, or that kind of cyan color. That's because these words are keywords in the SQL language, so it's turning them blue. Now, that's a perfectly valid SQL statement there, but it's not pretty. So what I'm going to do is click on this button up here, which is the Beautify button, the little paintbrush. And what that will do is reorganize my SQL into a neater form. Okay, it capitalizes all the keywords and lists them out like this. So when I do something like that, I get the same results. It's still the same statement, but it's easier to read. And this is really what you should be doing with all of your SQL, is beautifying it. Now, I can type this as a capital L and capital name, and they'll come out just fine. And down here, whoops, beautify it again and run it, and it spells that way here. Now, one of the things that we often do in database design is put names in forms that aren't always the easiest to read. And we would like them to display, in most cases in queries, in a more readable form. We're used as humans to seeing something like last name as two separate words with a blank between them. So I can type here as last name. Now, I've got red squigglies here, and if I hover over it, it'll say unexpected name. That's because it thought this was some sort of a keyword, and this one too, and it can't figure out what I'm trying to say. And what it means is, when I want to change the name to a name that contains a blank, I have to enclose it in quotes like this. Now it'll work. Let's run it. And notice last name has a blank. Let's do that for first name as first name. And look at enrolled data scrolling off to the side of the screen as enrolled, single quote, date. Now, let's beautify this thing. because it's kind of wide now. Watch what happens. Nothing happened. It should have wrapped it, but MySQL is a little buggy, so I'm just going to come here and put enters on these. Oh, I misspelled the as. There's my problem. Let's beautify it again. It turns them to uppercase. And now when I run it, I have very neat column headers. You should always, when you're aiming your output in assignments or in the workplace, you should always rename your columns if it's going to be seen by a non-technical person. By the way, as I'm typing, it just says SQL file 18 with an asterisk behind it. That means that this file hasn't been saved to disk. If I decide to save it, I can just go save script as, put it somewhere, and name it my script, something like that. And now the file is saved, and I can open it up and rerun it anytime I want. So in this lesson, we looked at how to take a select statement, pick the columns that are in it, and also rename them into something more human oriented.